Chapter 47 of Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80 by Charles Dickens. Chapter 47. In the exhaustless catalogue of Heaven's mercies to mankind, the power we have of finding some germs of comfort in the hardest trials must ever occupy the foremost place, not only because it supports and upholds us when we most require to be sustained, but because in this source of consolation there is something, we have reason to believe, of the divine spirit, something of that goodness which detects amidst our own evil doings a redeeming quality, something which, even in our fallen nature, we possess in common with the angels, which had its being in the old time when they trod the earth, and lingers on it yet, in pity. How often on their journey did the widow remember with a grateful heart that out of his deprivation Barnaby's cheerfulness and affection sprung! How often did she call to mind that but for that he might have been sullen, morose, unkind, far removed from her, vicious perhaps, and cruel! How often had she cause for comfort in his strength and hope and in his simple nature! Those feeble powers of mind which rendered him so soon forgetful of the past, save in brief gleams and flashes, even they were a comfort now. The world to him was full of happiness. In every tree and plant and flower, in every bird and beast and tiny insect whom a breath of summer wind laid low upon the ground, he had delight. His delight was hers, and where many a wise son would have made her sorrowful, this poor light-hearted idiot filled her breast with thankfulness and love. Their stock of money was low, but from the hoard she had told into the blind man's hand, the widow had withheld 1 guinea. This, with the few pence she possessed besides, was to two persons of their frugal habits a goodly sum in bank. Moreover, they had Grip in company, and when they must otherwise have changed the guinea, it was but to make him exhibit outside an alehouse door, or in a village street, or in the grounds or gardens of a mansion of the better sort, and scores who would have given nothing in charity were ready to bargain for more amusement from the talking bird. One day, for they moved slowly, and although they had many rides in carts and waggons, were on the road a week, Barnaby, with Grip upon his shoulder and his mother following, begged permission at a trim lodge to go up to the great house at the other end of the avenue and show his raven. The man within was inclined to give them admittance, and was indeed about to do so, when a stout gentleman with a long whip in his hand, and a flushed face which seemed to indicate that he had had his morning's draught, rode up to the gate, and called in a loud voice, and with more oaths than the occasion seemed to warrant, to have it opened directly. "Who hast thou got here?" said the gentleman angrily, as the man threw the gate wide open and pulled off his hat. "Who are these, eh? Art a beggar, woman?" The widow answered with a curtsey that they were poor travellers. "Vagrants," said the gentleman. "Vagrants and vagabonds. Thee wish to be made acquainted with the cage, dost thee? The cage, the stocks, and the whipping post? Where dost come from?" She told him in a timid manner, for he was very loud, hoarse, and red-faced, and besought him not to be angry, for they meant no harm, and would go upon their way that moment. "Don't be too sure of that," replied the gentleman. "We don't allow vagrants to roam about this place. I know what thou wantest. Stray linen drying on hedges, and stray poultry, eh? What hast got in that basket, lazy hound?" "Grip, Grip, Grip, Grip the clever, Grip the wicked, Grip the knowing, Grip, Grip, Grip," cried the raven, whom Barnaby had shut up on the approach of this stern personage. "I'm a devil, I'm a devil, I'm a devil, never say die, bow wow wow, Polly, put the kettle on, we'll all have tea, "Take the vermin out, scoundrel," said the gentleman, "and let me see him." Barnaby, thus condescendingly addressed, produced his bird, but not without much fear and trembling, and set him down upon the ground, which he had no sooner done than Grip drew 50 corks at least, and then began to dance, at the same time eyeing the gentleman with surprising insolence of manner, and screwing his head so much on one side that he appeared desirous of screwing it off upon the spot. The cork drawing seemed to make a greater impression on the gentleman's mind than the raven's power of speech, and was indeed particularly adapted to his habits and capacity. He desired to have that done again, but despite his being very peremptory, and notwithstanding that Barnaby coaxed to the utmost, Grip turned a deaf ear to the request, and preserved a dead silence. "Bring him along," said the gentleman, pointing to the house. But Grip, who had watched the action, anticipated his master by hopping on before them, constantly flapping his wings and screaming "Cook!" Meanwhile, as a hint perhaps that there was company coming and a small collation would be acceptable, Barnaby and his mother walked on either side of the gentleman on horseback, who surveyed each of them from time to time in a proud and coarse manner, and occasionally thundered out some question, the tone of which alarmed Barnaby so much that he could find no answer, and, as a matter of course, could make him no reply. On one of these occasions, when the gentleman appeared disposed to exercise his horsewhip, the widow ventured to inform him in a low voice and with tears in her eyes that her son was of weak mind. "An idiot, eh?" said the gentleman, looking at Barnaby as he spoke. "And how long hast thou been an idiot?" "She knows," was Barnaby's timid answer, pointing to his mother. "I always, I believe." "From his birth," said the widow. "I don't believe it," cried the gentleman. "Not a bit of it. It's an excuse not to work. There's nothing like flogging to cure that disorder. I'd make a difference in him in 10 minutes, I'll be bound." "Heaven has made none in more than twice 10 years, sir," said the widow mildly. "Then why don't you shut him up? We pay enough for county institutions, damn him. But thou'd rather drag him about to excite charity, of course. Ay, I know thee." Now, this gentleman had various endearing appellations among his intimate friends. By some he was called a country gentleman of the true school, by some a fine old country gentleman, by some a sporting gentleman, by some a thoroughbred Englishman, by some a genuine John Bull. But they all agreed in one respect, and that was, that it was a pity they were not more like him, and that because they were not, the country was going to rack and ruin every day. He was in the commission of the peace, and could write his name almost legibly. But his greatest qualifications were, that he was more severe with poachers, was a better shot, a harder rider, had better horses, kept better dogs, could eat more solid food, drink more strong wine, go to bed every night more drunk, and get up every morning more sober, than any man in the county. In knowledge of horseflesh he was almost equal to a farrier. In stable learning he surpassed his own head groom, and in gluttony not a pig on his estate was a match for him. He had no seat in Parliament himself, but he was extremely patriotic, and usually drove his voters up to the poll with his own hands. He was warmly attached to church and state, and never appointed to the living in his gift any but a 3-bottle man and a first-rate fox hunter. He mistrusted the honesty of all poor people who could read and write, and had a secret jealousy of his own wife, a young lady whom he had married for what his friends called the good old English reason, that her father's property adjoined his own, for possessing those accomplishments in a greater degree than himself. In short, Barnaby being an idiot, and Grip a creature of mere brute instinct, it would be very hard to say what this gentleman was. He rode up to the door of a handsome house, approached by a great flight of steps, where a man was waiting to take his horse, and led the way into a large hall, which, spacious as it was tainted with the fumes of last night's stale debauch. Greatcoats, riding-whips, bridles, top-boots, spurs, and such gear were strewn about on all sides, and formed, with some huge stags' antlers, and a few portraits of dogs and horses, its principal embellishments. Throwing himself into a great chair, in which, by the by, he often snored away the night, when he had been, according to his admirers, a finer country gentleman than usual, he bade the man to tell his mistress to come